In this video, we will talk about deep learning and the different components of deep learning and how it is linked with AI and the other systems of AI. In this slide, we are going to talk about the second component of AI, which is deep learning. Now, deep learning is a subset of machine learning that works on the principle of artificial neural network. Now, ANN is inspired by the human brain, the one of the organs within the brain, which is a neuron. Now, if you look at the diagram on the right hand side, you see a photo of a neuron, the different components. So we have a cell, then dendrite and nucleus, and so that's the neuron. So what happens is the message goes from one neuron to the other neuron and then to the next one, and then it comes to the final destination where it can make a decision. So the same concept of this neuron is used in ANN, where we have something called layers. So the diagram on the right hand side, we have three layers. The input layer, where we have the input to the system. It could be the data that comes in, and that could be the input. The output layer is the variable that we want to predict. For example, it could be a class, a binary class. It could be a multi-class classification problem. It could be a regression problem where we are predicting a number. So it could be anything. So we have the input layers and the output layer. Now all the action where the prediction happens is within the hidden layer. So that's the center part of the diagram on the below. So if you look at this diagram, we have three nodes, the one in the red, the one in the green, and then we have the blue. So these are called as the nodes. So think of nodes as it takes the input from its previous layer and it extracts the best information out of it from the previous layer and then sends it to the next layer. So that's the functionality of these nodes. So get the best information and pass it on, and then the next node will take the best information from its previous node and then passes on, and then it goes to the final output layer to make a prediction. So that's the concept of deep learning. Now, why is it called deep? Now, if you look at this diagram, we have three hidden layers. The one in the red, which has the nodes. There are 5 nodes. Then we have the second hidden layer, which has 4 nodes, the green ones. And then we have the third hidden layer, which has 3 nodes. So like this, you can keep stacking the number of layers depending upon how simple or complex the problem is. So the number of stacking that you have for each of these layers, and it is deep down. So that is why the name comes as it's a deep layer or deep learning. So that's the basic idea behind the deep learning. Now, most of the now, if I have to talk about the problem statements, real life, we can do image classification, image recognition, audio processing, video processing. All these things are examples of deep learning techniques where the data is not in a structured form, not necessarily in a structured form. So how you read the data, how you process the data, so that is done only by using these deep learning techniques because of the way the data is processed. So they are converted into a form called tensors. So that's the main difference between a machine learning and a deep learning. So in machine learning, the data is relatively smaller in size. It is more structured, and even with a small set of data, you can build a model. Whereas in a deep learning, it requires a very complex data structure and it can process them well. And it is heavily dependent on the hardware, and it really requires a very stable and a very good system to build these models, and it takes time for the model to learn the distribution, learn the patterns. But at the end of the day, deep learning does a very good job of classification and regression. Now, not only it is used in these typical machine learning techniques that we saw earlier, but in the new context of generative AI, where we have the large language models getting built, The LLMs are built using the deep learning techniques. Now here are some well-known neural network models. Now it starts from a very simple model where we can build a machine learning type of a problem like a classification regression. So you can see here the deep feed forward. So that's one of the examples. Now for image classification, we use the second one, which is the convolutional neural network. Now, when it comes to generating text, which is part of the GenAI, it started off with the first deep learning model called as a recurrent neural network, RNN, and then the LSTM. So these were the starting point of the GenAI, where the idea was to predict what is the next word of a text. So it started off with these simple models, and then because of some limitations, because it could not process the context, it could not process multiple words. So that is when we have the transformer models, which is what we have in most of the large language models. So we have the autoencoder, variational autoencoder, AE and VAE. Then we have the GAN models, which is used a lot in the generative AI programs. In this video, we discussed about deep learning, what are neurons, and how the artificial neuron are created and how they're inspired by the human brain. We also saw a couple of well-known neural networks that are used in the GenAI applications and how they are created and how they are implemented in these large language models.